Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 Smyrna Municipal Planning Commission meeting. I will call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a prayer from Mark and the pledge led by Andrew tonight. You'd stand.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for another gorgeous day here in our city, Father. Lord, we thank you for the blessings that you bestow on us each and every day, and those that we take for granted as well, sometimes that we don't notice, Father. We appreciate those. Lord, we ask that you watch over us tonight as we deliberate the business of our town, make proper decisions that benefit our citizens, our employees. Father, we pray that you'll continue to watch over them and all those that protect our city, and first responders, our police department, and our fire department as well. Lord, we also just lift up this past weekend, the Memorial Weekend, Father, and continue to lift up prayers for those that have served our country and made the ultimate sacrifice. We pray that you will be with their families in remembrance of them. Go with us now as we do our work. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in our pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Andrew. Kevin, citizens' comments.
None at this time.
Okay. Approval of the minutes for our May 6, 2021 meeting. Counselor, are our meeting notes in order?
Order in form, Chair.
Any questions from the Planning Commission or any changes that need to be made? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. On to old business. The first item under old business is site plan, Rutherford County Baptist Church, 2000 Amberton Road, owner developer, Rutherford County Baptist Church.
This is a plan that you guys saw last month. This is for Rutherford County Baptist Church, which is planning to relocate from their existing facility on Seminary Road. Just to give a little bit of visual, it's across the street from where 1 Mile Lane enters into Allenville. The major concern last month we were talking about was the architectural elevations. The elevations submitted do show a primary material of brick, stone, and a glass, and a secondary material using EIFS. South elevations, which face Allenville, are shown at 27% EIFS and 73% primary materials, and those primary materials or other is referenced by a brick, stone, or glass material. East and west elevations, which are both visible from Allenville, show 40% EIFS and 60% other, and then 62% EIFS and 38% other, respectively. The northern elevations, which aren't visible from Allenville but are visual from the parking lot, show 48% EIFS, 52% other material, and all the elevations accumulated together yield approximately 43% EIFS and 57% brick, stone, and glass material. A couple standard comments we had, as well as a couple staff comments. Staff comment 1, we asked for sewer construction plans, which they were waiting for utilities to take a look at. Comment 2, additional access permit to Allenville Road, subject to approval by TDOT. More of a standard comment than anything else. Comment 3, we asked them to provide dumpster enclosure elevations. They have done so. Comment 3, we asked them about a private sewer line. They have addressed that. We're just waiting for utilities to take a look at that and make their comments on it. Comment 5, fire hydrant would be required on the west side of the building. They did add it. We just want to make sure the fire department's okay with that proposed location. Comment 6, regarding CUD infrastructure, they do indicate that it should be able to adequately meet the fire flow requirement of 1,000 gallons per minute. And then from really 6 down to the rest of them are all CUD comments. So mainly in conclusion, regarding the architectural elevations, more or less this is a replication of what was submitted last month, but more so showing what breakdown of percentage of materials are being used. 43% EIFS and 57% mix of a brick, stone, and glass material. The other 2 businesses which are present on that Allenville Plaza are in that commercial subdivision are using a mix of brick, EIFS, and stone and primary materials in both instances, with brick EIFS rather being used as an accent more than the brick and stone materials. So Generally speaking, it is meeting the current design review guidelines as it's stated. The proposal later that we have on the agenda for the design review adjustments as EFS being more so an accent, it would be technically meeting those standards as it's set forth currently being proposed at this time, just because we don't specify percentages, but currently this is what they're showing for that 43% EFS and a 57% mix of all the other materials in all for that site.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mitchell while he's here? And/or staff? What is the timeframe as far as the approval from TDOT as far as the access? Do we know?
I'm not sure what time frame would be, in a driveway permit. I'm not sure how long TDOT would take to review it and approve it.
Are we talking about the access being adjacent or across from 1 Mile Lane here?
Right, that was one thing we've worked with the designer to make sure that the lanes line up, or if this intersection's potentially signalized later on, that it does line up.
What would be the triggers for signalization here? I know that we talked about it, we've seen this on several different occasions. Several different uses have been brought to us prior to this. So what would we be looking at, or what would TDOT look at as far as that goes?
Just standard traffic signal warrants that they would rerun them after to see if this would trigger. I don't believe the church itself would trigger, since it would be Sunday, Wednesday, but depending on what the vacant lot ate, or if any future, 7-day-a-week type activities were there, that may trigger it then, but currently I don't believe it would meet warrants at this time.
Would TDOT require that as part of their approval, just to approve, as far as just the access, number one? I'm taking it TDOT would not require, it is not going to require a traffic study. Is it something that the town would have to request, or is this something as this continued to develop out?
They put in for their driveway or road access permit, they'll look at it at that time.
TDOT will?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they will determine if they need any further information.
Okay. Do we know, Mitchell, you mentioned it, as far as the other buildings that have been constructed there, do we have a percentage mix on those?
There was no percentage mix really when those were submitted to us, but just taking a look at it from Google Street View of it, just that's what I gathered on it.
I'm sorry,
those materials.
I take it EFS was a small percent, but we don't know.
Correct.
what-
It was more so secondary. I'm not sure exactly percentage wise, but
Yeah.
it was more so secondary.
Okay. Other questions?
You've got a left out coming out of that drive as well, and that's going to be a pretty convoluted little area right there, I think, if somebody's trying to take a left out of that drive and trying to cross over to where cars are merging from the opposite side without a signal. A little spooky.
What would be even worse than that, coming 1 mile going straight across 3-4 lanes of traffic? Because that's where it narrows down.
But well, both are issues. but,
Yes,
you know.
yeah, coming in and out.
But Charles, you don't think a signal's going to be warranted, and I get that, because a church isn't a full-time, traffic situation.
And it just depends on how like I said, you still have that one other lot to develop. It depends on what kind of
Traffic,
traffic generator that becomes, and if that other, comes a back road to the other two businesses that are already on that road. So they'll just have to run the signal warrants from their current traffic to see if it will warrant a signal.
But as I take it, this is 100% TDOT's call on this, correct?
It will be their call is. Like I said, it is a state highway, so they will verify, if you do need a signal or not.
Okay.
So the lot that's left out there is beside that thrift store, the bread store.
It's lot 8, which would be next to the road there that connects across the 1 mile. That's the other one vacant is drainage area. So it's just that one lot and any potential future building that the church may have on the backside, their future building, what those would be.
The rear exit to this just goes out by the washateria. It does not connect back to the, where you get out to the red lights. So there's no access for exit for where they're gonna have lights or anything. Visibility on the building as far as your ephes and brick mix, the auto parts store has pretty much all brick. It's two-tone brick. You've got a brick on the bottom, a different color than you want to do on the top, and same with the thrift store. And I know it came before us and we requested they address some of that for visibility, because you can see it 360. And the church will be the same way. Once those mounds come down that's on the property out there now, once they level that off, you'll be able to see it. It'll have a 360 view around it. So I'm still concerned about the lack of brick and the ephes that's currently on it. Because once they level that off, you'll have a view from all sides of the property, especially coming in and out of Amble Road.
Enoch, give us your name and address, please.
Enoch Garrett with Hollis and Steel Engineering. I'm going to talk about TDOT just a little bit, and also with me is Pastor Paul Chisgar with Rutherford County Baptist Church, and Mr. Brian Templeton, who is the architect for the project. So I'm going to let them talk about the architecture. With TDOT, is correct. We'll have to submit that to them. One thing that requires a local jurisdiction approval review first before we send it to them. We have done a signal warrants analysis, which we've submitted to the town, and at this time it does not does not meet signal warrants requiring a signal. The traffic coming out of 1 mile lane today, 80 or almost 90% of it is the right turn in the morning going out, and about the same thing in the afternoon coming in. But those, the church is really just a Sunday, Wednesday night, which doesn't conflict with that. The west face is really not, the church is 130 feet off the road, off the pavement. So the west face is not going to have a lot of visibility. And the east face will, and the south face, facing down the road, will have visibility. And then the east face, coming around the curve, you'll be able to see that side of the building. There's no doubt about that, driving down the road. Yeah. But this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brian Templeton, the architect, let him discuss the architecture of the building.
Okay. If you could state your name and address, please.
Okay, Brian Templeton, Upland Design Group, Crossville, Tennessee. Thank you for letting us submit the additional information. I hope the elevations and the 3D renderings helped with the visualization. As previously stated, the overall percentage of ephes on the building is less than 50%. We just wanted to clarify that because I think that was one of the questions last month when you first reviewed it. When we were going through the process of design for the new church facility, we developed by looking at your design standards. We also looked at the context. We did find that there was ephes on some of the nearby buildings, but then also cost is a factor too. So as you can see, there's been a lot of detail and articulation on the south facade, which is going to be the prime facade. That was very important to the church. So there's a lot of depth, change of material, all those things that we think creates the focus and the identity of the church. A couple of things about the ephes. We're always very cautious when we do design with EFS. We know that there are maintenance challenges over time that building owners deal with. So I wanted to point out that there is a masonry skirt around the entire building. It's about 3 feet tall. We do that so that we prevent damage due to moisture. That's one of the biggest issues with EFS. And then also mowing, those types of things, just normal abuse that would happen. The other thing that I'd like to point out is the building is internally drained. We did that intentionally so that we don't have downspouts and gutters along the perimeter, because we find that with buildings that use EFS as a facade material, when you have a leaky downspout or a leaky gutter, that creates stains and is very unsightly. So I just wanted to point out that all of our drainage is internal, so we should not have that issue, and it should be easier to maintain. So, are there any questions that I could answer?
So is it the primary consideration, the cost?
We wanted to create a mixture. Cost did play a role in it. Like I said, we're spending a lot of money on the main facade, trying to create some presence and scale and interest. And so our focus was there, and then we tried to simplify on the other sides of the building. Not to, scale back, but just simplify. We looked at fiber cement products. I know that that's an acceptable building material, but I guess in the design process, we felt like that the building scale didn't lend for a siding, something that would be smaller in scale and would perhaps look a little more residential. So we felt like the EFS and the larger scale that we were able to do as far as panels and reveals and that sort of thing helped out with the look of the building.
Other questions?
Do you know what the percentage of EFS was prior to, or last month when submitted?
We didn't make any changes.
You didn't make any changes?
No,
Okay.
sir. We wanted
You're
to
just clarifying what the
Yeah,
percentage
I know that it's sometimes hard to interpret the materials on a black and white elevation, so I was hoping that if we provided the information, you guys might get a better feel for it. And then also to give you the three-dimensional renderings, it's a little easier to interpret the materials that we were proposing.
Sure. No, I appreciate the three-dimensional color. It definitely helps visualize as opposed to the black and white, which is why I was asking, because I don't think I realized the bottom, the architectural at the whatever,
skirt, yes,
the
sir.
skirt was brick there. But I think, and although you show the percentages, obviously that it's under 50%, so technically that becomes a secondary covering based off of what we discussed. I think therein lies still the question. If nothing was changed, it's still an awful lot of EFS. For us, we've got to decide, as you see, we've got another item on the agenda to clarify that for our design review going forward, what that overall percentage is. And even though it's under 50%, it's just under 50%. So yes, it's secondary, but I think the intent of what we were looking at for EFS would be more of an accent item as opposed to still something 40%. I mean, it's still a very attractive building, and I appreciate you making those clarifications about how you've designed it architecturally, because that was the first thing I thought of, is that much EFS, it's going to stain very quickly, it's going to mold very quickly, it's going to be an ongoing maintenance item. And so the skirt and the drainage certainly helps with that. So that was a very good explanation. I appreciate that.
Other questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and second. Further discussion?
I'm going to chime in just for a second here because in the last month when they were here to present this, one of the things we always want to welcome is another church into our community. We appreciate that. And I get that, I talked to Enoch about this last time. We get that this currently does meet design review, but also that we have some leverage here to try to make it look as good as we possibly can going forward from the standpoint of some of the things that have been addressed here already this evening, and that's how EFS over time can begin to show its age and show its wear. Mitchell brought up that some of the neighboring buildings we did the same thing with them. So in a consistency manner, I think that's where I'm coming down, and it's a tough one for me because, like I said, we want to welcome your church in and certainly make it feel like it belongs here. On the other side of that, I think Mike said something a few minutes ago that kind of has some validity. When you level that lot off, you're going to see quite a bit of this, and that's kind of the thing we're trying to refrain from going forward. And that's another reason why this is on our agenda later this evening. We're trying to take EFS out as a primary source and make it more of an accent source. And then from architecturally, I appreciate you getting up and telling us a little bit about the purpose behind it, like Tony Dover said, and how the drainage will help offset some of the staining and the moisture and things of that nature. But it's a pretty building. It is a pretty building. I'm just trying to be consistent in that area over there with the way I feel about it. And I just wanted to get that out there so you would understand probably when we vote the way I feel about it. So trying to get some consistency and make sure that we don't have a lot of EFS staring at us from all different sides. That's kind of the main thing here. So that's where I stand. There's been no changes to it since last month, which strikes me a little odd. I think we kind of let Enoch know a little bit about how we felt about the amount of EFS that we see and what we didn't like. Thank you again for the explanation, but there's no change here. So I'm going to try to stay consistent with what I did before.
If I may, is there, I know you're going to discuss it later, but is there something that, I know if you look at that red store, it's a brick building, except it's got metal panels. I don't know how much percent metal, but it's metal panels. It's not allowed. It's got metal on the front of it. The AutoZone has a lot of brick, or the O'Reilly's. The other building in that area, in that Amwell Plaza, has a lot of EFS. It's probably at least 50% EFS. But is there, really, we're, 70-something% on the south face, which faces Amwell Road, and maybe 60% of brick and stone and glass on the east face. The other two, I don't think you're gonna see as much. Is there a number, and that'd be something that the architect would have to make sure that would work physically. Is there a percentage that makes you feel better, or is it?
I didn't get a chance to see that this month compared to last month.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a barometer for you to go back and say, that looks better because you didn't change anything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think last month the discussion on the south face was y'all thought it was primarily EFS, and it's really not. I didn't really know the percentages either. It's 27%, I think, EFS, where we thought it was maybe even 60, just the way the drawings, we didn't have the detailed drawings, or the perspective drawings. I just didn't know if there was a percentage on the south face that would, if you're looking at later on percentages, or is it just still subject to the architect's look? I'm just trying to sort of figure out what's, the best fit here. That's just a question. I just really didn't know. Appreciate it.
Kevin, getting off the EFS just for a second, what is the remedy at that intersection? Is there a remedy there? Because if you're turning left and going towards the interstate coming out of that drive, you've got to cross really kind of over two lanes there. Am I correct? You got a turn lane and a straight lane. Is there anything for safety there that can be discussed or implemented. Are you as a staff comfortable with that, or?
I mean, beyond signalization,
Right.
I don't know if there's really,
There's no remedy.
there's not a remedy, because it's too big of an intersection and really too big of a deal to think about some sort of roundabout or some other traffic calming kind of remedy. I mean, we're well aware of the intersection and the traffic that's going through there. We just didn't, this use doesn't trigger it, so to saddle this developer at this time with the signal didn't seem like it's something that we could really require or recommend to you to require. I mean,
And it wouldn't make any sense to put a right out only there. I mean, that wouldn't make a sense. I
No.
thought about that, but it wouldn't make any sense at all, so.
Just real quick, Mark, the pavement section is a 5-lane section, actually it's bigger than that. And we'll work with TDOT, they might even want us to, take out some of that striping and add another, lane, dedicated lane going towards the interstate, give you another lane to get into. They may want to redo some striping or redo some of that intersection, because there is quite a bit of pavement there. I drive through there every afternoon on the way home, and there's.
So you understand my concern?
Oh, I do, and there's a lot of pavement there. It may just be as simple as restriping some of those areas and adding another, there's already a through lane there. You got that dedicated left into 1 mile lane, but it's something we just have to work through with TDOT on that, and they're not gonna approve something that's not safe. I mean, so we'll work with TDOT when we get to that point on that intersection.
Kevin, what is staff's opinion or recommendation on this?
with regards to the specific
Yeah,
EFS question, or?
Yeah, and, no, that in conjunction with what we've required out there before. I mean, Enix asked if that could be remedied. If I'm looking at it, the south facade's 73% other, 27 EFS, the north facade's 52 and 48. The east facade is 60, and EFS is 40, and the west facade is 38 other and 62% EFS. And I was going back and looking at the renderings of the different elevations, and it looked like that on the major difference that I saw was on the, let's see if I can find it again. I was looking for the east and west. Where did I? It looked like you had a lot of stone on,
It's the south side, is it?
let's see, I just saw it. Oh, it looked like on the west elevation where they were at 62% EFS versus the east where they were 60% other. I'm trying to figure out what's different, because if you look at the west, it looks like there's a lot more stone there, and I'm not quite sure, again, from a scale, what tips it and that, So if we're looking at it, and to Mike's point, the building can be seen from the south and the east. I'm assuming, Mike, you were talking about the west?
I drove around it. You can see from all sides.
Okay.
Once those mounds come down, once they clear it, I went in the parking lots behind it, the warehouses behind it. It's visible from all angles.
Okay.
There's really nothing hidden, because once they extend that road or tie that road into the current little easement road that's behind the auto parts and the little thrift store, that'll clean that up. There's a lot of trees and some mounds of dirt, look like where the construction had been done prior to, and they just made dirt piles, for a better term, out there. And of course, trees are growing, grass is growing, so it's kind of deceptive right now looking at it. And even when you go back out to McNary Lane, which is down the road across the street from 1 mile, it's visible as soon as you make that curve there. Where their property line is, there is a detention pond, I believe, right, Kevin? Is there a big detention area there, retention area for water?
There is, on
coming from McNary.
the adjoining property,
Yeah.
there is,
And
yes.
that's
Right.
open as well.
Right.
So
on the
that's where the
adjoining
warehouse property, I guess, starts.
Right.
So from there, all the way through, you're gonna be able to see it. Visibility. There won't be a side that'll be hidden or, that won't be visible from Anvil Road going in or out. Or if you're in that back parking lot, even at the, where those shops are behind it, and that washateria is behind it.
And I guess, and I get the scale, and I guess I'm struggling where Mark struggles. Of course, we want to welcome churches and as a important part of our community. And we did ask the other businesses, and I don't consider this a business, but in this area, it's a little bit jumbled because I think, it was originally meant to be retail, and that kind of went away. And then we had some requests for some commercial, non-retail. That went away. We finally got a couple stores in. We know eventually that Amberton Road intersection is going to be improved, and it's going to be a nice gateway into the community, and we know that Amberton Road corridor is going to continue. So when we had the two businesses that finally decided to build, it was the same thing. They came to us and, did they meet our codes? Yes, with what they proposed. We asked them would they consider coming back to us and increase the amount of materials other than EFS, and they did. And I guess I just thought maybe from the spirit of things that we were going to see the same thing here. So my struggle is, does this meet what our codes say? Yes, it does. Is it exactly what we thought we were going to, or we should be getting? No, probably not. Did we have other businesses that worked with us with this parcel? And the answer is yes. And so here we are, ready for a vote, and, we're being asked, what's the percentage? What would you like to see? I'm not sure, is there a number, or is there an elevation where it could be improved to a point where we could get to what we're trying to achieve? And having said all that, knowing that we do have discretion here as a board as far as what we can require and what we can do as far as our recommendation going forward, and knowing that, council's also going to take a look at this, and they're going to express an opinion one way or the other. So
Tim, I want to add to that too, a couple of things, right? I'm also surprised that the elevations are great, but I'm also surprised that nothing was changed considering what our request was. I actually thought that the skirt was EFS on the last one, and so having this document helped, from that percentage perspective. But at the technicality of the rule, right, it's a secondary item, right? And so when you look at if you look at the overall, and EFS is 43%, okay, fine, technically it's not a majority, but you do have the west facade that we're talking about that doesn't meet design review when you look at the technicality of being a secondary item as well. So we are kind of splitting hairs on this. The intent was we asked for less EFS. We did not get that. But even saying whether it meets design review, that specific facade doesn't. I mean, at a minimum, that one doesn't. So if we do take it overall, I mean, some of that is also up to us. We've got this item on EFS to discuss at the next item. Clearly, we need to be a little more specific on what secondary means. But considering the expression that we had, that the whole planning commission made last month, and to not have any changes made on it whatsoever, I think is also a little disappointing.
Brian, if you can help me a minute, we've discussed with the pastor about really the east side, because it's going to be visible. The west side, I know, I've been all over too, Mike, but that detention pond coming down from that direction, I've been driving that way for 32 years now. but that detention pond is really blocks from Amberville Road, because that's what the ordinance says, the visibility from Amberville Road. If you drive through the parking lots and all through there, yeah, you can see it. But driving down Amberville Road, you're not really gonna see the west side. The east side is the one that you're gonna see. And Brian was talking about increasing the brick up to, I don't know what, above the
Up
windows?
to the top of the window. Yeah, so
On the east elevation.
I think that would get us to the 70-30 or close to the proportion on the front of the building. So it would be, I don't know if you guys can make it out, but there's a reveal line at the top of the window. And I guess, we didn't make the change because we wanted to get some input. It's not a matter of disrespect. It was just to we wanted to give you the information before we charged forward and get a little more feedback from you. But I think, as an architect, I think that there's more impact with that, because that's gonna be, that's gonna be visible, along this face, and from the primary corner would probably give you the biggest impact and make an impression that the building on two sides is predominantly masonry. You're taking the two least likely seen and, you're scaling it back, which was what our intent was, is to spend the money where it would be seen and then scale back where it wouldn't be. Because there's a landscape buffer here along this edge, along this face. So you're only gonna have a section of time while you're traveling on the road that you're gonna be able to see up this area. Anyway, that would be something that I think could be easily done. It's gonna cost a little bit more money, but I think it makes the most impact if it is necessary to add brick.
Thank you. Thoughts on that? Kevin?
Hold on, quick. I thought you may be talking to the commission.
Well, I am. I'm talking to anybody who wants to talk to me.
Obviously, that would correct, probably, we would come close, it's hard to know exactly, but that would come close to correcting the issue on that side, getting a closer to that 70-30 or 75-25 or something like that, certainly, on that. And that would be the two primary elevations that would be visible. The west elevation would not be as visible. I think it is going to be somewhat visible. The north elevation is the one that's from Allenville Road. It's going to be not really visible. You'll certainly see it from the parking lot. You'll see it from the frontage road, but not necessarily Allenville Road.
So, from a landscape buffer which they mentioned, do you feel that would achieve what we were looking for as far as the west elevation and not making any changes, or would you want to see changes to the west elevation as well?
I'm assuming they're talking about the buffer that's on the adjoining property. I don't think there was a buffer. We didn't require a buffer there, I don't believe, along on their side of the property.
Because we were satisfied with the natural buffer that already existed
Well, I
on
mean,
the other property?
Well, and it's not a residential
Right, so
type.
we're not-
We're not as
basically
concerned with
too
with a
commercial.
buffer there
Okay.
as far as what we would require. Certainly, as the church may, actually, it was put in when the industrial park was built, because I don't recall exactly what this property was zoned when that industrial park came in, but.
It's a planned industrial, the industrial park, Pantone, and they do have a tree line along that detention pond on the west side. And if you look at the landscape plan, we do have maple trees on that corner down in there, so that when you're driving in here, we have a group of maples in here that'll help, screen the visibility of that west side. You're just not gonna see the west side. I've been in this area, the church is 100 and something foot back. You're just not gonna see that west side, but the east and the south are absolutely visible from Alma Road, there's no doubt about that. But there is that berm with the detention pond on the South Park development, and they do have a landscape buffer there today, existing.
So that's the only elevation, the west is the only elevation that is truly perpendicular to the road.
Correct.
Right? Everything else will be very visible, to your point. So, and with even limited landscape, you're gonna see less of the west, plus the fact that it's the only one that's perpendicular, makes it even less likely to be seen. Now, you'll see some, but maybe not a full view like you will from the other side.
Right, the east will be absolutely visible coming around that curve. I guess something will develop on 8 will screen it some, but today, when you drive around that curve, you're gonna see the east.
Big time.
You'll be staring right at you.
But,
Yeah,
but
but the west is gonna be screened, yes, sir.
I agree, that
Yeah.
will be the least
Right.
seen. Now, I know you can see it, but you're not gonna get this big, full view of it like you will the east side, right?
And we put our landscaping, we did some groupings around the corner so that you can see the front of the building. It's like, say, it's a beautiful building, the church wants to show it off. And it's set back 120 feet, I think, from the pavement, so it's not right on the road. It's got a nice green space in front that you're gonna see, nice, lawn in front you'll see as well.
So just for the record, I'm in favor of this. Of course, I made the motion, and it's frankly because I don't think we're gonna have a big issue with the west side. And also because frankly, you're meeting the design standard. I was not expecting this to be changed. I may be the only one. I was not expecting this to be changed. I was expecting the answer of what are the percentages, because we didn't know, right? But I'm okay with it as is.
Okay. Jeff, from a procedural perspective, if Tim made the motion, does he have the ability to amend the motion to include increasing the amount of brick veneer to the top of the windows on the east elevation, or do we need to?
Yes, he can, as long as the second will also
Okay.
agree with that.
Would you like to amend your motion?
No, sir, I would not.
Okay.
I would like to keep my motion the same.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Are there any other motions that we can entertain?
Need to have a positive motion towards either approving or denying what's been.
Okay, so we have a
Motion to approve fails.
We have a motion to
yeah.
approve fail, so then that brings us to either a motion to deny.
Based
or-
upon, yes.
Based upon, or they could actually bring back a different motion, or are we just at a motion to deny at this point?
Any motion that you like.
Okay.
Just that one just failed.
Okay. Just want to clarify for us up here.
Or do we have the option of letting you go back and amend and bringing it back next week?
Yes, I think anytime that if they're amenable to doing so, I think they can do that.
I think we'd be in the same position we are right now. I mean, we've offered to increase that east side to, up to the windows, which makes it 75%. I don't know what else we would do,
My suggestion, the reason I asked, is that you could update your submission to include that, because right now that's not what's in front of us.
Yeah.
And the motion wasn't amended to account for that.
Yeah. Well, we'd appreciate an approval with that offer that the church has made to do that. I guess.
All right, motion to approve with staff comments and with bringing the brick up to the glass as you guys described.
being the east elevation.
On the east elevation.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the staff comments and to include bringing the brick veneer to the east elevation to the top of the windows.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I will second that again.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Let's do a roll call there.
Well, we still need a, he
Well-
still needs an affirmative.
Yeah, well,
You just want to know what it is.
I want to know what it is before we know if we're asking for an affirmative.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman Tim Morrell,
I'm a yes.
Vice Mayor Mark Atkins,
I'm a no.
Tim Slate,
Yes.
Amy Wise,
Yes.
Tony Dover,
Yes.
Andrew Atkins.
No.
Mike Allen.
No.
4-3?
4 yeses, 3 nos.
Okay. 4 yeses, 3 noes.
So it's approved.
Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny.
On to new business, the first item is rezoning request, Adam Green, Portico, Blair Road, PRD amendment.
This is a requested amendment to an existing approved PRD. It's on Blair Road. It's about 5.77 acres. The surrounding zoning is a mix of C2, R6, and R1 in Smyrna. And it is also has a PDR, which is similar to our PRD zoning, as well as I2 zoning in Laverne. The future land use plan with support of office, retail, multifamily mix in this area. The proposed amendment is to change the approved PRD from 16 single-family lots to 33 townhomes. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Blair Road as a collector, so development of this property will require dedication of 30 feet of right-of-way from the center line of the road. That would be done at the point of a subdivision plat if it's if this is approved, or if the existing PRD remains and they develop it as under that zoning. There are some proposed amendments to Blair Road. There's the adjoining I-2 development in Laverne is actually about to get underway. And there's going to be some improvements to Blair Road, as well as the Sam Ridley Blair Road intersection that developer will be doing. We had several comments. Several of those have been addressed. We had one of our first comment, number 5 there, that we were concerned. There's units on either end of the proposed development, units 1 through 3 on one end and 30 through 33 on the other. That basically the access is, instead of utilizing the cul-de-sac area, there's going to be a separate alleyway extended. They have widened that to 22 feet wide. It was narrower than that, so we had some concerns about blocking that with cars. I feel a little bit better about that now with it being 22 feet wide. That's the same width as a street, so 2 cars can meet there safely now within that. But that is something we did have a concern about that the commission may want to discuss a little bit. Comment 6, we asked them to provide their development schedule and phasing plan. That's now been taken care of. Number 7, we'd asked them to clarify the minimum building setbacks for some conflicting information, and so that has been corrected. It will be 30 feet from Blair Road. Number 8, we had some concerns about the staff, or not staff parking, but guest parking. And they had, basically, we're looking at utilizing 3 driveway parking spaces with having an additional 1 in the driveway. They have added, they still have that, but they did add several additional guest parking spaces, and I feel comfortable with what they have shown there now. That was our comment. We did recommend additional guest parking be provided, and they have done that. So that comment has been addressed. We asked them to ensure that the fire department has access at a maximum of 150 feet to all points of the building, and they have, that has been done. That's taken care of. The road, within the development will be private, and they did have it as a 20-foot pavement width. We had asked them to widen it to 22, which they have done, so that can be, comment 10 can be removed. And we'd asked them to show the dimensions on their parallel parking spaces and at 8 by 22, and they have done that. Number 12 is a comment for them. They will have to provide a road name approval from 911 for the roadway. That one's not it's an issue that can be addressed later, but we did want to bring it up to them. And then they have some renderings in their packet that appeared to show some on-street parking for Blair Road, because these were the front of the units. These units will front Blair Road, and you will be coming into your garage and your driveway from the rear. And so that, we just let them know that wouldn't be allowed. That's not their intent. I think that's what the rendering shows, but it was not their intent. But we did want to point that out to them as well. So, so we do have this. I'll bring this one up. This just shows probably this page does show the most clearly the concern we had about the 22-foot drive aisle on either end of the private road. It was just something we're a little different than what we've seen before, and so we did have some concern about that, just from mainly about if cars are parked in that drive. Again, previous renderings didn't have as much guest parking, and so we had concerns about cars being parked in that drive aisle, people's driveways getting blocked, things like that. That was where our concerns were. So. Again, I think they did, by widening the aisle, I feel better about it, certainly, than what it was before. I think that's all of our comments.
Heather, you made a comment regarding the private alley. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, the roadway, the main road coming in from Blair Road is a public street, but the two cul-de-sacs on either end of this would be a private roadway.
Okay, that's all. Okay. Kevin, this was originally submitted as single-family homes.
That's correct.
Do we know why we have this amended request in front of us?
I haven't talked to them specifically about that. I'm sure certainly that Mr. Taylor might could answer that better than I could. Yeah.
Name and address, please.
Yes, sir. Matt Taylor from SEC, 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I'm also accompanied by a couple of the representatives from the development team, Mr. Martin Aaron and Mr. Adam Green. To answer that, really, you know, as Kevin said, I think this PRD was approved in 2017 or early 2018, somewhere through that time frame. And really what we've seen out there, we think, is kind of an evolution of the area. Specifically, the biggest change out there is with the proposal and approval of the large industrial project to the north. Whenever we started hearing of that several months ago, we started, you know, thinking this area combined with, you know, the office buildings, the hotels, the apartments to the east, this portion of the property really felt more transitional to us. And so we started looking at options, and that's where we settled on this, which was a, you know, a rear load alley townhome project. We really feel like this will be a better overall project for not only our project, but the town, for a couple of reasons. It lets us provide more open space compared to the last plan. It lets us provide and keep more natural area because we can move less earthwork. The property is pretty narrow through here because of the stream and the buffers, and so this option lets us build these units more into the hillside. We think aesthetically it'll be better coming along Blair Road. We're able to turn our front door toward Blair Road. Previously, those homes were going to have their back, the rear of the home facing Blair Road, and while it was a nice looking product, the backs can become unsightly. That's where people live, in their backyards, in a single family home. We've also added bus shelters, a little park area, neither of which were on the previous plan. And then, as Kevin said, we have removed a large portion of the public road, so there's less road here for the town to maintain. That alley will be maintained by the HOA. One thing under this, that HOA will maintain all the yards, so everything will get mowed and maintained on a regular basis together, so it's not on a piecemeal basis by each individual homeowner. And then I think this plan lets us comply with the comprehensive plan a little better, given the recommendations out of that. So I'll be happy to try to answer any other questions, but I think really just the evolution of the area is what drove our request here, Councilman.
So I did look in our packet, to your point, I did see that we have R6, several C2s across the street. And of course, the part of the PRD would be the single family behind this, which would be in Laverne, correct?
Yes, sir, and really, one of the reasons why we hadn't made any requested changes over there is we had started our earthwork and our utility and our road construction over there, and really it was so far down the line by the time the industrial project come along, it was just kind of out of the gate, so we really could not make a request over there.
Other questions for Matt while we have him up here? Do we know a price point of these? Have we gotten to that point yet?
So they're projecting roughly low threes. They're a minimum of almost 1,600 square feet livable space, and some of the prices I'm hearing on a per square foot basis are, in the upper hundreds. So we're thinking, low threes as a starting spot.
Okay. Other questions?
You're saying that these townhomes will now face Blair Road?
Yes, ma'am. And so we'll have the garage will be on the back side, all the parking will be on the back side. And so you'll see nothing but front facade. And that's probably best shown in your booklet on page 12. And so they're actually 3 stories, and the bottom story is going to be kind of cut into the hillside. And that's part of what allows us to, do less earthwork and leave more of that area natural on the other side of the alley is that design. Whereas the other, you're having to pad everything out as a 2-story front entry home.
I guess
Just for a little more clarification.
Yes, sir.
With the diagram and the picture, the car parked there on Blair Road, that's not necessarily parked?
No.
That shouldn't have been there?
That's correct, and we just missed that whenever the architect did the rendering, but by no means do we want anybody parking on Blair Road. I wouldn't want to park there, I don't want anybody living here parking there, so.
Well, it's just not allowed to be parked there.
And have we allotted
Exactly.
for enough visitation or visitor parking? I do see one space in the back.
So we're going to restrict our garages so that they are for vehicular use only. That way somebody can't put all their, storage in there and then take up a spot. And then we provided 3 spaces outside. And then we provided, I think it's 15 total spaces, so about 1 for every 2. And so that's a pretty generous guest spaces, a number of spaces, I think, by comparison to most of our projects. And we tried to spread those on both sides of the main entryway. That way they were very convenient and walkable to anybody that comes into the development.
These going to be for sale or lease or rent?
My client is a for sale, so we will set these up.
So
Actually, I'll be on individual lots of record.
So once
and be
they're sold, you can't regulate what they do in their garage?
Well, it will be by the HOA, so it'll be written into the restrictive covenants. And so we just need that one nosy neighbor to move in and, for lack of a better term, and she or he will regulate that.
Kevin,
Or they.
what do we require on something like this as far as parking spaces?
What we
outside
typically
garage?
require is 2 per unit outside in the driveway, which they've got 3 shown, and then we try to have the additional guest parking. So I'm okay with the parking that they've got shown, because they've got actually 1 additional beyond what we typically require, plus the additional guest. Once they added that additional guest parking, I felt comfortable with it.
Okay.
Prior to that, I wasn't comfortable. Once they added this last revision, they added that additional guest parking, so I'm good with it.
Was there a reason that they were turned back toward Blair Road rather than
It was really to offer something a little different. It's that tuck-under garage, and it looks better whenever you turn them around. We think it presents a better face toward Blair Road, so we think it's better aesthetically. And whenever you do that tuck-under third story, we've done some of that. If you're familiar with the Boulevard restaurant in Murfreesboro, there's a section of those, and they're all that rear entry, and it lets you put that front toward the street. Gives a very nice streetscape. And I think the industrial project's going to do some improvements on Blair Road, and so I think that's going to be a good opportunity to increase that aesthetics there.
Other questions for Matt?
Matt, what's the materials being proposed?
So all brick and cement board, there's no vinyl, no EIFS, so good quality materials. It's the same commitment as it was before.
Is that the same way with the rest of the project with the homes behind it?
Yes, sir. I think everything inside of here, I don't think we have any vinyl across the entire project, to my knowledge. In the trim and soffit areas,
Yeah.
but as a primary material, no.
Would you be predominantly looking at doing elevations facing Blair that are a step up? As opposed, I don't know if you're doing two, like front side, side. I don't know what your plan is there, but.
I'm not sure I understand your question,
Well, from the
Councilman.
visibility of Blair Road, these will face Blair Road.
Yes, sir.
Right, so from a design perspective, do you know what materials will be used facing Blair Road?
Yes, sir. So I think if you look at page 12.
I saw that, I just,
Yeah, I think we've tried to present a front porch toward Blair Road, which gives a very nice look. And then we try to give different elevations, alternate through there. So you have, a different build or different unit. You can tell which home is which. It's not one big block through there. And so you've got, one building which may have a brick water table. The next one may be half brick. And then you've got some horizontal cement board versus some vertical cement board. So it does a very nice job of breaking up that front facade. And then even if you get up into the eaves, you got some shake up in there and some other additional detailing. And they've done a good job mixing in dormers. They've got a couple of different types of dormers. They've got some that I would describe more doghouse, then you have some through there that are bigger, one-piece, three-window dormer.
As far as utilities, Kevin, is this on Smyrna water sewer?
Yes.
Okay, because I know that was a question with the development behind it. Is that on
It's on Smyrna Sewer, I believe, on the Laverne side.
Laverne side too?
I believe that's right.
That's right. Laverne Water, Smyrna Sewer.
But this would be all
Smyrna.
Smyrna.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually have to go across the street, I think. I'm trying to remember the name of the road that we line up with over there to get the water. Comes out of the, up next to the hotels there. Is that Portico there?
Portico Place, yeah.
Matt, I know you're not proposing parking on Blair Road, and that was a great question that Andrew had. He saw the drawing of it. You do have sidewalks from the porch to Blair. Are we are those going to be there, or is that just part of the drawing?
I think that, I believe that one day there will be sidewalks along Blair, so I do think that we want to provide sidewalks out that direction. And so I don't know that we would have sidewalks along Blair day one, but we would definitely build those coming out from the porch to, say, the right-of-way along there, so that whenever that is improved, it helps our residents walk.
Is this on kiosk?
Yes, sir. And we have proposed a single kiosk on this side. We're proposing one on the other side, so those may wind up getting combined in the future if the USPS will allow us. But right now, we're showing one for just this side.
And because it's Blair Road, I'm asking this question.
Yes, sir.
Without sidewalks there especially, I've talked about pedestrian sidewalks. Any thought of doing any kind of ornamental front fencing?
We have not talked about that. I think that we could probably,
I'm just wondering to
kind of separate that public from private space through there, you mean?
safety as much as, you know.
Something
Yes, sir. You
Like
thinking maybe a
black
2 or a
aluminum.
3 foot, like
Yeah.
tall black aluminum?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's not a problem.
And then maybe, if that so were to work out, take that to the point of the right-of-way, to where if a sidewalk was to come at some point later on,
Yes, sir.
there'd be gates there.
Okay.
Just an observation, and this is out of left field. If I'm on the, let's see, we're on page 12, looking at
Yes, sir.
your renderings here. If I'm walking out of my house and I'm on the end and say I want to visit my neighbor who's grilling down on the other end, do I need to go out my back door? Because there's not a sidewalk, obviously, on the Blair Road, as you said yet, right?
You know, I think that something that's worth looking at here, especially with the addition of the black aluminum, is going and adding, it could be a private sidewalk, but that's parallel to Narren, or not Narren, but Blair, that would connect those, so you could do exactly what you just said. So I
Yeah.
think that would make a lot of sense with the addition of this black aluminum, and would provide a hard edge. It may be a private sidewalk for now, until that public sidewalk gets built in the future.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Do we know that, is there any time frame, Kevin, on road out there?
Charles may know more, because I know he's been
I
working
don't
with
have a
that.
schedule on it. They have submitted plans, and it will be 2 12-foot lanes, 4-foot shoulders, and they're taking it completely down to the subgrade.
Okay.
So they will completely eliminate the road that's there and totally build it up from the dirt all the way up,
From the base up?
from the base up.
And I was talking to my client, if you're amenable to it, we would just prefer to go ahead and install the public sidewalk, you know, a couple of feet off the shoulder, or 5 feet off the shoulder, whatever you're amenable to there, and go ahead and get a public sidewalk along that section of Blair as well. Really round out that roadway.
You almost have to work with staff. We've seen sidewalks where they didn't line up in the next phase, so.
Yeah, we'd have to coordinate that with those road improvements that Charles is talking about, certainly.
Yeah.
Those are coming with their first phase, right, Charles?
Right, they're, like I said, right now, what they have planned to put in is the 12-foot lanes, 4-foot shoulders, so you can add your sidewalk, you know, at the edge of that 4-foot shoulder is, you know, depending on what the look you want is there. Because they will be, you know, dedicating that right away for us, so that will work.
And we have been in contact with their design engineer, so we'll be happy to work out their schedule. They're a little bit ahead of us on the plans, obviously, because we've still got to come back. You know, assuming the rezoning is successful, we got to come back with a preliminary plat and a site plan. So they have been through that process in Laverne already. So I don't think they have broken ground yet, but I know they've been through Laverne a couple of months ago.
Yeah, we know site plan and everything will follow. We're just trying to.
Yes, sir.
Get some of this stuff addressed now.
Charles, will it go all the way to Rock Springs? And then how far up Blair? How much of that Blair Road's gonna be?
They're gonna rebuild from Sam Ridley intersection, they're gonna put an extra right turn lane in there, and they're going to the city limits.
Okay.
And right past that curve.
Yes.
Because their entrance will be right around the curve in Laverne.
Okay,
So they will rebuild the whole section.
okay.
Other questions, comments? Good down here? Everybody good? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
You know, part of the reason, I think Matt was appropriately pointing out what is all around this property. And, it kind of does break the flow going into the residential. I think with some of the things they've agreed to do, it's going to make it more attractive probably than your typical product that we've seen in the past. I would favor the fencing we discussed, and I would favor the adding the public sidewalks at time of construction or whatever, so before, however staff sees fit, but certainly make that part of the proposal.
Is that a motion, or?
Are you looking for a motion?
Well, I'm looking for something.
Okay.
So just a comment before we do a motion. So if we have the sidewalk, would the fence still be a needed accessory, or is it an either or?
Yeah, I think it needs to be in there. If you have any children, you don't want them out of that front yard. Not on Blair Road.
Okay,
It's a way to contain them.
good. Wanted to clarify. Thank
Yeah,
you.
typically though, under a typical scenario, the backyard's backing up to the
Right.
road, and then you typically have fencing there in the backyard. So
Right.
it's the same type of scenario.
All your parking's in the back, it's kind of reverse. So I will make the motion, Chairman, I'll offer my motion to approve with staff comments the addition of public sidewalks and black ornamental fencing in the front.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Tony. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item under new business is Victory Cove, 2381 and 2483 Rocky Fork Road, rezoning R3 to PRD.
Yeah, this is a rezoning request. It's currently zoned R3, requested to be rezoned PRD. This area is also in the Union Springs overlay. It's about 10.1 acres. It's two separate tracts totaling 10.1 acres. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R3 and PUD, which is the adjoining development addition to Village of Valley Green, which is primarily a single-family PUD. It's all that's been built to this point. The future land use plan would support a mix of medium-density single-family and multifamily in this area. This proposed PRD is for 100 townhomes. The major thoroughfare plan designates Rocky Fork Road as a collector, and so development of this property will require dedication of 30 feet of right-of-way from the center line of the road. In addition to that, Country Village Drive is designated as a collector and will be required to be extended through this project to Rocky Fork Road with a 60-foot minimum right-of-way. It currently dead ends in the adjoining development. Our staff comments, some of these have been addressed. First off, a traffic study will be required. Improvements as recommended by the traffic study will be required to be installed. The connection of Country Village Drive to Rocky Fork Road may need to be 3 lanes, 1 ingress, 2 egress. That was just a comment in addition to the requirement of the study that staff had looked at and made. The next one was to provide proof of adequate right-of-way existing for all of Country Village Drive. There's 2 tracts of land owned by one owner that they will have to work through and get some additional right-of-way for to make that full connection to Country Village Drive. So they'll still need to work through that. Number 7, sewer is required to be extended from Country Village Drive. They have shown that, so that can be removed. Staff would recommend some additional guest parking be provided beyond the 25 shown. They have added 14, so there is now 39 guest spaces in addition to two in the driveway for this site. Number 9, we had made a comment, they had only had a single wide driveway. They have corrected that to make it double width now, so that can be removed. We'd asked them to provide some additional details for the amenities. There's some open spaces they were showing as improved open space. They have some amenities shown, but then there were some areas that they didn't show, and they have basically shown there's a couple of those would just be, basically just be improved with grass, but then one of them with a garden area. They do have the additional, the dog park and a swimming pool and all as well shown. The landscape buffer, they had a couple of lots, they had shown that the buffer strip was kind of inside the building envelope, and so they've taken care of that. Public Road D will need to be extended to the property line. That has been shown now. And then, because this is a part of the Indian Springs overlay, we did ask them to show the percentages of each material to be used on elevations to comply with that. That has not been done at this time. So that is the comments we had made. We'll tell the commission, we did, beginning today primarily, we did receive some calls, and I know there is some concerns and opposition to this development from some adjoining property owners. And so they had stated that they would be here tonight, so they maybe have some audience members that do have those concerns about this development, so I just wanted to let you, make sure you're aware of that. We didn't receive any calls on the other one, but we did receive, on this particular request, we did receive some calls, so I wanted to make you aware of that. I think that's what I have at this time.
Kevin, when I was initially looking at it, and I know we just got through looking at another project that was much smaller, but what struck me in what we were looking at before, we had a combination of R6, C2, some industrial, from what I take it's, I guess we'll be in the Laverne area. We're surrounded here by a single family, are we not?
Yes.
I guess it was my impression that we're just trying to, it seems like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I know that, again, you hear the word consistency from me repeatedly, but I seem to recall several subdivisions that we've looked at where we've had R3 or PUD where someone had talked about a townhome development or something that wasn't consistent with surrounding. I think we've always been very careful that when we've looked at it from that perspective, that we've tried to be cognizant of that to make sure that if we were looking at something other than what was there, I don't recall ever approving anything along those lines.
We've had a couple different scenarios. We've had someone where it's a very large development, even much larger than this, where you may have 500 or 600 or more units, and there's a mixture of single family and townhomes within it, or something like that. Or certainly have had standalone townhome developments as well, but most of those have been either adjoining other multifamily, or they were adjoining like the last one, we had there was some commercial area nearby or something, and maybe this was behind the commercial that's on the main street or something like that. And so, or it may not necessarily be behind commercial, but it's on a 4-lane highway or something like that. So it's a little bit different scenario than this one, certainly. As far as the ones that you all have recommended for approval anyway. So.
Is there any existing homes on this property currently? Do you know?
There is nothing on this property currently, no.
Used to be.
There is a house that is accessed through these properties that is on the adjoining tract where they'll have to look at potentially buying some right-of-way, yes.
Okay. Tim, you were talking about the consistency portion of it, and as I recall last month, we had a similar proposal for Terrytown.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't meet favor there because it just wasn't a fit. Nothing around it fit. So I think Tim brings up a good point here. I kind of feel the same way he does. Nothing about this fits in this location. And the one we just got done discussing had all the commercial, the apartments, and everything nearby. It was a third of the amount of units as well. So this is 3 times that amount, putting into a residential box. So I kind of know how I feel about it, but I'd like to know what you think, Kevin, from a staff perspective.
Well, certainly we have concerns about it, and so I think we would, because of the adjoining zoning, I think
Right.
the overall, I mean, there's some issues with the development plan itself that we need to tweak or whatever, you might can make work, but I think because of the surrounding zoning, we would have a concern recommending approval on it, yes.
So staff is recommending not to approve
At this time, yes.
at this time, as
Yeah.
presented.
As presented, yeah. Because of the concerns of neighbors and because of the surrounding zoning, I think this would be our concern.
I'll be glad to give you a motion to deny if that's what you're waiting for.
Well, is there any other discussion? If not, I'm happy to accept it.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
as the applicant, I'd like to recommend that we at least defer for 1 month. Representing the applicant, I'm Jared Gray, Civil Design Consultants, 8170 Coley Davis Road, Nashville, Tennessee. It would give us an opportunity to look at things. We hear you loud and clear in regards to what you're saying regarding our current layout. But
It's not just the layout, mind you. It just, to me, it's a fit. And townhomes in the middle of a residential neighborhood, to me, is why I would have, if we finished the motion, that's the motion I would have made. It just doesn't seem to be a fit piling 100 or even 50 townhomes in there, if you will, in my opinion. And so that's why I was beginning to make that motion. You're welcome to ask for deferral, we'd be glad to look at that, but I personally know how I feel about this going forward. It's up to you.
And I'll just tell you from my perspective, if I were to consider a deferral, it would be because you were going to come back with a single-family home project. Because, again, as Vice Mayor Atkins mentioned, we had, gosh, was it 6 or 10 units maybe total that, again, was being
About
put.
10 units on 2 acres, I think.
Yeah, that was on 2 acres that was proposed in the middle of an R3, and it was just not consistent with the existing and surrounding zoning. So if you're talking about, coming back with another project like this, I think deferral is just going to waste your time. For me, I can't speak for everybody else.
I think that's the message I was trying to portray as well. And we're trying to be courteous in the fact that we're giving you a kind of a signal how we feel. You could cut this density in half and I wouldn't like it any better. That's just me, so.
Okay.
Do you want to continue with your motion to deny?
I would continue with my motion to deny unless the gentleman has something else he wants to add.
We'll remove our request.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to deny and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of denying this request signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This motion is deferred.
It's not deferred.
I'm sorry, denied. Thank you.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
They both started with D.
Yeah. Thank you. I need to catch that. Our next item is 7 Oaks Business Center, Phase 3, 7 Oaks Boulevard, C2 to PUD.
Yeah, this is a rezoning request on 7 Oaks Boulevard. It's 4.47 acres, currently zoned C2. The requested zoning is to a PUD. The surrounding zoning is a mix of C2 and the PRD, which is the Villages of 7 Oaks residential development across the street. The future land use plan would support an office, retail, multifamily mix in this area. This proposed PUD would allow for 26,000 square feet of office warehouse space, which is really is allowed by the current zone, but as part of this PUD, they're including it. In 2 separate buildings there, and then 1 building of a self-storage space at 89,752 square feet, and that is the reason for the zoning request. This self-storage is an industrial use under our ordinance, and so they had to go through, it would not be allowed in the C2 zone, and so that's why they have requested this zoning change. Just for everyone's information, this major thoroughfare plan does designate 7 Oaks Boulevard as a collector. There is adequate right-of-way there for this. So that's, we have made some comments, but all of our comments have been addressed before it ever went out to you all. Again, it is a mixture of commercial and industrial uses, and so that's why the uses in the office warehouse would be consistent with what's allowed in C2, which is again what's allowed already. But certainly be just a continuation of the adjoining development. They are also connecting, would be a new access to Seven Oaks Boulevard, but will be connecting into that adjoining development in the back as well. So there would be cross-access through all of that area for fire protection and other reasons. So I think that's all that I have.
Is the storage building itself, is that a climate controlled?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
It is all
Yeah.
internal, yeah.
Matt Taylor from SEC, 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I've also accompanied by Mr. Dow Smith, Mr. Rob Alley, and Mr. John Blankenship on the ownership side. And yes, sir, the climate, it will be climate controlled. Probably page 15 does a good job showing kind of how that looks. Looks more office building-esque as opposed to the self-storage. These have changed drastically, both in functionality and architecturally over, I would say, the past 5 years. We have seen many more that are multi-story like this. And so a lot of brick, a lot of windows. Even got some tower features to, make that look architecturally interesting. It's not the older style, one-story metal, unclimate controlled option. So really we see these as an amenity to the residential that's around as well as the businesses. So.
We do have a residential element. Can you talk to us a little bit about buffering and what we're doing there?
Yes, sir. So when we first started looking at this project, we knew there was existing houses on the north side of Seven Oaks, so we wanted to be sensitive to them. And given that we've already got the Seven Oaks Business Center directly to the west there, that's, I think, really been picking up steam. I think we had a site plan a couple of months ago for the next building or two over there. Thought that it'd be appropriate to bring that same product over here, let that face Seven Oaks Boulevard, and then push the self-storage back against the interstate. And so really, somebody once told me when I was young in my career that the best buffer is distance, and so I think that's exactly what we've tried to provide here.
And the rear elevation, I guess it would face 24, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's a metal?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I do believe, or someone can help me, the Seven Oaks Business Centers, don't we have, or do we have metal on the exterior, rear exteriors there?
On the rear of those buildings, yes.
Okay.
Actually, we had one, Chairman, you remember, that we asked for them to put metal on it in place of EFS.
Yes.
You recall that was a few months ago. So.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions for Matt while we have him in front of us?
Matt, what's the total height? I know it's two-story, but with the...
So to the very top of the parapet, it's about 38 feet. To the actual building line itself, it's between 22 and 30, depending on where you are. That's a single slope roof, so it slopes from the front to the back.
Okay.
That is very comparable to the office building that I think it was Tennessee Family Solutions, if I'm not mistaken, the brick building that is to the east between us and Racetrack here, and will be shorter than the apartments that are to the west of here. And it's probably fairly comparable to the existing residences that are across the street. I think all of those are 2 stories, and so I'd say those to the peak are in the 30-foot range. So it's not going to be this big towering feature. It's very comparable, especially given the distance between the two.
And to your point, Matt, storage developments have come an awful long way. That's a really good-looking building for what it is.
Yes, sir. We have found that, obviously, I mean, you've seen it, the trend is toward a smaller lot, less storage on site. It's not a 1-acre lot anymore. And so people need a place to store their stuff, and they want that to be here. At the same time, this may serve, say, 400 residences, but it's very low traffic generator compared to the rest of what you could have in C2. You know, you bring your stuff, you drop it off, you come back and visit it once a year. It's very little traffic generation.
No outside storage at all.
That's absolutely right.
Talk to me about your buffering, Matt. What's your plans on buffering?
So up along, I don't think we've necessarily planned for any landscape buffers, just because these are pushed back off the road. We'll have our normal perimeter yards, and then, of
From the
course, there's a
interstate
pretty good
side?
buffer along I-24 back there.
Is it a natural tree line back there?
It is.
That's the one thing I'd like to make sure of, especially that we're not exposing just a big metal building site-wise, you know, that we have.
Yes, sir.
We have some buffering there, but I agree with Tony. It's a very attractive building, and I agree with Mike too, the low impact of parking and so forth, and it's, you know, there's not a whole lot of traffic to put in there, so.
Yes, sir.
Other questions?
Will that building require a sprinkler?
Yes, sir.
I believe it will, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got a quick, before you go, I'm sorry. Just a little clarity on page 16.
Yes, sir.
That center section that has the roll-up doors. Where exactly is that located?
So that is
It
on
might be slapping me in the
page
face.
16 is the pictures of the two front buildings. And so that is on the back. So those roll-up doors will actually face the storage itself. It will not
Okay.
face the only place you'd be able to see is if you were standing at the storage.
I see.
You wouldn't see it from the residential.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yes, that's good.
Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
you.
Thank you.
What is the pleasure of the commission?
Move for approval with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Looks like we're ready for preliminary plats. The first one being Gwynn Farms Phase 3, Robert Gwynn Drive, owner developer Lennar Homes of Tennessee LLC.
Yeah, this is a preliminary plat for the next phase of Gwynn Farms. This is 66 lots, 15.57 acres. We had several comments, most of which were standard. The first four would all need to remain. Those are kind of standard comments. And then number 5, this, again, our thoroughfare plan does designate Rock Springs Road as a collector, and there are proposed improvements as required by the other developer, Gwynn Farms, that they'll be constructing as a part of phases 1 and 2. We had a couple comments that they have addressed. Number 6 regarding the showing the easement widths on some of the lots. They have cleared those up and have provided those. And then we'd asked them to add a hydrant on the western half of Line S Drive. They needed a hydrant to make sure there was adequate coverage, and they have added that hydrant. So that's those two, the only two really remaining staff comments that have been addressed. This is consistent with the approved PRD of Gwynn Farms, and it's just that next phase. So that's all I've got.
Questions for Kevin? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the staff comment.
A motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next preliminary plat is Shorts Crossing Phase 2, Matthew Miller Drive, owner developer Michael's Homes LLC.
So this is the preliminary plat for Phase 2 of Shorts Crossing. This is 25 lots, 12.25 acres, zoned R1. Again, we had some standard comments, which are those first four, which would need to remain, and then we just designated all, the thoroughfare plan would say all the streets here are minor and adequate right-of-ways are being provided with the development. We had comments 6 through 10. Number 6, there's a landscaped area within Matthew Miller Drive, kind of in the curve, that they had designated as a utility and drainage easement. We just want to make clear that that's would be maintained by the HOA and owned by the HOA, and they have shown that, and so number 6 has been addressed. Number 7, we'd ask them again to show some dimensions on all the public utility and drainage easements. They have done that for the most part. There's still 3 that need to be fixed on lot 19, 20, and then across the common open space. We'll need to modify comment 7 just for that. Number 8, the required pavement radius for the cul-de-sacs is 40 feet. They had 36 shown. They have corrected that, so that comment can be removed. Number 9, they had dedicated all the common open spaces as easements, and so we want to make clear that those will be maintained by the HOA and they're not public easements, and so they've added some note 16 to the plat, so that one can be removed as well. And then number 10, we just point out to them that any lot that has an easement in the side yard will be required to have an additional 5-foot building setback from the easement, and they have shown that on their plans now. So number 10 can be removed as well. So really it's just those standard comments, and then that number 7 modified a little bit regarding those 3 specific easements they still need to show dimensions on. And with that, that's all I have, and we can recommend it to you.
And this appears to be very consistent with what we've seen before.
It's consistent with everything that's been shown on the plat to this point, yes, sir.
And staff is recommending approval with comments.
Yes.
Questions or discussion? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Any further discussion?
Chairman should be not voting on this one. I'm abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 1 abstention. Our next item actually is a final plat. This is Amberton Section 4, Carnation Drive, owner developer BMCH Tennessee LLC.
Okay, this is Amberton Section 4, it's 41 lots, 12.96 acres as part of the Amberton PRD. This is actually the last phase of Amberton. We had a few comments, again, just regarding the thoroughfare plan and that all streets are minor here and they are providing the adequate right-of-ways. Number 2 is a standard comment to provide the owner's signature prior to recording, and CUD as well. We'd asked them to show the hydrants. They didn't have the hydrants shown originally. They have shown those now, and they are spaced adequately for coverage purposes. We'd asked them to provide the widths on the pavement widths dimensions, and they have done that except for one. The cul-de-sac hydrangea court has not been shown, so they'll still need to show it on that particular street. We'd asked them to show the mail kiosk or where it would be located. These lots will be served by the existing kiosk. It's in Section 1, so we don't need an additional kiosk. and we'd asked them to show the sewer services, and that has been done. The rest of those comments are from CUD, and so they'll need to look at those. So we would need to keep 7 through 11, and then just number 4 as it's been modified, and then number 2. And we would recommend it with those comments.
Okay, questions for Kevin? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve staff comment.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Our next item under final plats, Gwynn Farms Phase 1, Robert Gwynn Drive, owner developer Lennar Homes of Tennessee LLC.
So this is final plat for Gwynn Farms Phase 1, Section 1, 70 lots, 31.1 acres, again, part of the Gwynn Farms PRD. Again, same comment as before. This is, Rock Springs is a collector, and there's proposed improvements to the road that would be constructed as a part of this phase of the development. Again, just number 2, owner's signatures are required before the plat can be submitted, so they'll need to keep that. And they are showing the mail kiosk, but it's kind of off-site on the next phase, and we just want to make sure that number 3 would need to remain, that it would need to be installed before the issuance of the first CO. The rest of those comments, 4 through 8, have all been addressed and can be all be removed. So really just the comments 2 and 3 are all that's left. And it's consistent with the approved PRD, yes, sir.
And is staff recommending approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kevin, when do the improvements have to be made?
Well, there's 2 phases. The signalization there at Waldron Road, and that first phase has to be done really before they can get permits. And then before the 100th permit can be added, there's some additional widening of Rock Springs Road as you move east towards the second entrance of this development, and some improvements there. That has to be done basically before that 100th building permit. So there's 2 phases.
There's really no timeline up to the 100th permit, I guess.
Well, there's part of it will be a part of that before they can get permits initially.
Which is the signal.
Talking about the signalizing
Yeah.
at Waldron Road and the improvements around that intersection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions or discussion? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve with staff comment.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments from Andrew. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mike. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our last item under final plats is Lee Crossing, HRP plat, Section 4, Phase 3, Amberton Road and Leadville Drive, owner developer Old South Properties, Inc.
Yeah, this is the last plat for this development, Lee Crossing. 46 units, 4.3 acres. It is a part of the Lee Crossing PRD. We had really only one main comment. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Amberton Road as a minor arterial, and they are dedicating their adequate right-of-way there with this plat. We'd ask them to show the water services, and that's been done, so that we can remove that. And then number 3 would need to remain, which is just an informational comment that they are going to have to go underneath Amberton Road with the water service installation, water line installation, and that would not be allowed to, they'd have to bore that, and not be allowed to open cut that road, so. And with that comment, staff can recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin?
Is there final phase in here?
Yes.
Didn't take long, did it?
Did not take long.
Any questions or comments or further discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve staff comment.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for me. Further discussion? All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kevin, we're on to site plans, Pinto Place Townhomes, and actually it's Mitch, Pinto Drive, owner developer Egbert Ribeiro.
Pinto Place Townhomes is proposed multifamily residential development, which is located along Pinto Drive. In its current state, it is a heavily wooded piece of property. The PRD zoning for this parcel was approved by council at the February meeting for a 22 townhome development. Surrounding zoning consists of R4, which are duplexes to the south, and C2 along the other property boundaries. Development would have 2 access points onto Pinto Drive. Vehicular use area, 26,127 square feet, which would require 2,613 square feet landscaping. Applicant's proposing for 17,000, so far exceeding the minimum requirement. Parking required at 2 spaces per unit, so 44 spaces required, and they're showing for 55. Handicap parking spaces are not required being this is a townhome development, but they are showing for 4. Landscape plan shows a type C landscape buffer along the property boundaries, as well as trees planted in landscape islands around the parking lot area, and street trees are also shown along Pinto Drive. The elevations which were submitted show to be built with entirely brick. The approved PRD showed a mix of brick and fiber cement board, but staff would still find that the elevations as submitted are sufficient to meet the standards. The elevations also do show fiber cement accents as well. A couple standard comments to remain, as well as staff comments. Staff comment 1 from the fire department to state that no burning permits will be allowed to clear this site, so that's going to have to remain. Comment 2, fire department revise the fire apparatus movement plan. It is not adequate as shown at this time. This has been revised a couple times and still is not adequate to fire department standards. Comment 3, the public sewer main is shown connecting through a private easement. This is not allowed. Revise the sewer plans so that only public easements or right-of-way are utilized, and the sewer shall be served from Joyner Drive. That is a utilities comment. They have not had a chance to review it yet, so that comment will remain. Comment 4, we asked them to label the materials to be used on elevations. They have done so that comment can be removed. At this time, staff would not recommend approval of this due to the ongoing concerns of the fire department with the auto turn and maneuvering safely throughout the site.
For the commission, can Chief or Captain, can you come up and talk to us about where we're at with this and where they would need to get to get approval?
Yes, sir. Scott Byers, Smyrna Fire Department, 145 South Lowry. The 2 main concerns that we have in all the drawings that we've received, and if I may approach the screen,
Please.
it would be easier.
I think it'd be helpful.
In the auto turn drawing that was provided to us, it shows our vehicle making a right-hand turn upon exiting, or if you want to call it a left-hand going in, and the wheel track actually comes to the furthest point of these parking lots and just stops. It's a convenient way to not show that it definitely would encroach on these parking spaces, and it includes about 3 to 4 spaces here in front of 8 and 7. Secondly, the turnaround that is designed here on the drawing is a modified way to say that what we understand the developer is trying to indicate is that there is an option in the code for what's called a modified hammerhead, but that is actually a true T design with 60 feet of direct entry that provides for a shorter space here of 70 total feet. The problem with this diagram is that we can't ensure that this space that they're trying to utilize as part of that hammerhead can be lined off and kept free or clear of obstacles for the fire turnaround. In addition, it's requiring our driver to negotiate a left-hand turn and line his vehicle up in a minimum standard location to make that turn back. And to emphasize it the best I can, in the drawing it's 70 feet from this curb to the back. Our apparatus is 49 feet long, so that's if you had a small car that was 4 foot 9 inches long, you're asking our driver to back into a space 7 feet long and do that while negotiating a left-hand turn. And that's why we definitely would request that you consider denying this as drone.
The concern with the first turn, if I'm understanding correctly, would be if there were vehicles actually there that would prevent that, since you're negotiating it into a parking space. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions?
Mitch, you've had these conversations with them, right? Is the issue here that there's just so much density they can't make it work for these turns?
Not necessarily the density. Certainly, if they figure out.
Layout. It's more of a layout, okay.
Certainly make it work.
So this came, and this was, what happened last month? This came in and it was withdrawn. Do we recall, I don't see the notes, do we recall why it was withdrawn last month?
I believe they were working on the interior of the units.
It was really more about because they had kind of a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms, and they kind of had shown all 2 bedrooms. I think this was basically, they wanted to make sure they had enough pad space for the lots and all that kind of stuff was really the main reason why it was withdrawn last month.
And Steve, you're here representing the owner. If you could talk to us a little bit.
Yes, sir, be glad to. Steve Steele, 2115 Northwest Broad Street in Murfreesboro is our office. Sorry I walked in during the presentation. Y'all got through this part a little quicker than you did the first part. But what I just heard and what we understood the concern to be prior to me walking in here tonight was with the Hammerhead turnaround at the end of the project, the area where you see the crosshatch. That was what my engineer and the assistant chief have been talking about. Do you understand, or you want me to go up here and point?
Please, please.
Where a fire truck would pull up here, back up, and turn around and come out. There are, I think we've had a little difference in interpretation of the code. I think it's something that we can work out as far as that hammerhead. Was there anything, I apologize, was there something else you had a concern with?
Well, yes, sir, it's not a hammerhead. What you're doing is trying to create a hammerhead out of basically what is an alteration of a Y, and then you also are missing a significant portion that cannot be utilized solely as a turnaround for the fire. If you look, I mean, the confusion when you say this is a hammerhead, it is a true natural T with a 90-degree turn, but it also provides 60 feet of direct access, and that doesn't exist here, sir. I mean, our concern is that the engines, the town of Smyrna puts a significant value into the equipment that's provided to us and the dangers that are presented in any possible scenarios there, especially under an emergency situation. Those minimum standards aren't even close to what we would usually require.
Well, and I know we're not, you all aren't wanting to try to engineer or litigate this in the meeting, but I would respectfully say I think we're closer than that, and I really do think it's something that we can work out. I just need to have my engineer sit down with you and talk about it, rather than just going back and forth with emails like we've been doing.
Well, actually, you were speaking with Assistant Chief Lawrence, but regardless.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's no problem.
I'm sorry.
No problem at all. But, I mean, we're on the same page. We
Right,
discussed
yeah,
this.
we want it to be right. We have tried. My engineer did talk to Mr. Lawrence, I apologize again. And But that's the issue right there.
That's one, sir. The second is that the auto diagram there in front of your building 7 and 8, they cease at the beginning of the parking spaces where vehicles would be present. And if you were to continue the track that was provided, our engine would make significant encroachment into at least 3 of these spaces. It's an auto turn. When you, the drawing you provided in the auto turn, they simply stop
Right.
when those parking spaces are there.
I think I have that with me. I could show you real quickly if that's okay. And actually, the auto turn that you're referring to for your edification is a CAD program that we use to simulate the movement of the fire truck. The fire truck that we use is what we've been using for several years, which is the largest fire truck that Smyrna has. So it's a very complete template. Here's what we had here.
And here's the problem. Those lines just stop. That's impossible for a fire engine to do.
Well, that's the way he drove the program. But again, I think that's something that we can work out with a little time and the ability to sit down with you all. Because these aisles are just the same width as a normal city street.
Yes, sir.
So if you can maneuver a city street, which I know you can, we ought to be able to maneuver this.
I understand, sir. As you said, it's your program, and your program
Right.
shows our fire engine would drive into the parking spaces.
I didn't run this, I would have to check with my engineer,
Yes,
but
sir.
that's what we would ask that we be able to do. Somebody asked about why it was withdrawn. We did not have the architectural drawings that showed basically what was approved with the plan development. I think we only had 2-bedroom units at the time, and at the time, the architect couldn't get it revised, so we had to withdraw it. It wasn't because of the things that I just talked about with the chief,
All right.
assistant chief.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Steve?
So Steve, are you looking to pull it again for another, defer it for another month to work those things out? Because as it's before us now, it's with the recommendation to not approve it.
Well, we will do whatever you want us to do. I feel confident that we can work it out. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, then we'll do whatever you ask us to do.
I'm just asking what the process should be.
Yeah. Did we defer last month?
It was not
withdrawn,
deferred.
so we
It was
do have the
withdrawn.
option
You
of
have not
deferring.
taken any action on this site plan at all.
Okay, so we do have the deferral option
You can
available to
certainly
us.
defer it.
Should the commission wish to
Sure. You
go
can certainly do
forward.
that.
So we are actually down to, I just want to clarify, from staff's perspective, is working out the issues with,
Apparatus issues.
I'm sorry?
The apparatus.
The apparatus issue.
That's the
correct?
primary issue. I mean, there's the other sewer issue that they gotta work through too, and they may have, I know that, the primary reviewer on the utility side is out at the office this week, so they haven't had a chance to look at what's been submitted, so. So that would be another issue we would need to keep, but I think the primary issue is the fire apparatus.
Steve, do you feel that this could be worked out prior to the next month meeting? Would that be beneficial?
I'm sure it can. I think it could be worked out with a face-to-face meeting tomorrow. It's just something we just need to be able to sit down and discuss. It's hard to try to do that right here because we're talking about a computer program and.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were looking at, diagrams that we didn't have access to and couldn't look to it. I guess I'm getting a feeling, and maybe a verification is needed from staff, that staff would like 30 days to work this out potentially, or?
I think certainly I think that we would prefer that that would be fine, yeah. I think give the chance for the fire department and the developer to sit down and work through it all.
Frankly, I'm not confident that this will be quite as simple as maybe is being described, so in case we're talking about any sort of tentative action based, on a vote, I don't think that works for me. I think I'm up for a deferral more than likely.
Is it the Then, well, we need to take a vote. I don't need to take a poll. Okay, so I'm hearing from at least one member up here that.
I'll make a motion to defer.
All right, I've got a motion to defer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to defer. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor of deferring signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's deferred.
Thank you.
Next, under site plan, Smyrna Storage, 11691 Old Nashville Highway, owner developer Akbar.
This is a proposed storage building, about 9,000 square feet, which would be located behind the principal structure, which would also be out of sight from Old Nashville Highway and Hazelwood Drive as well. As existing, this is a piece of a larger parcel and is being utilized as parking behind that primary building. The purpose of this building is for extra storage for the existing tenants inside the strip center. The property is zone C2 and it has commercial uses which range from offices, retail, medical, and religious activities on the same parcel in a larger strip center. Total park required of 385 spaces for the entire piece of property, and then they are proposing for 385 as well. Handicap parking space required is 0. They are showing for 1. Architectural elevations show a primary material of ephes with a brick band around the bottom of the building, and being this proposed structure is less than 50% of the existing primary structure, design review does not kick in for this building. We had a couple standard comments which are to remain, as well as a couple staff comments. Staff comments 1, we asked them to show the water and sewer services to this building. The water will be required to service the building with a fire sprinkler system. As shown, the existing water service line is not in the correct location, and 2 existing water line services are located to the south under the proposed building. Both water service lines must be relocated around the proposed building. Comment 2, the building will be required to have a sprinkler system as mentioned above. Comment 3, we asked them to provide a full set of utility plans. Comment 4, the parking spaces will be required to be striped per the plans as shown. Just looking at aerial images, it's looking like the striping has faded quite a significant amount, so we would just like the applicant to stripe those when they're doing the building process. Comment 5, the building will be required to meet side setbacks of 15 feet. As shown, it is currently 7.7 feet from that side property line. There is a property line that does divide this larger strip mall up, so that is that property line that we are asking them to set a larger distance from. And comment 6, the drive aisle is required to have a minimum width of 26 feet, not 22 foot as shown. And this is, if you're looking at the diagram, on that left side drive aisle around the back of the building. And with this, staff wouldn't really recommend approval of this project either due to the oncoming the concerns we have up above, mainly with the fire suppression system not being shown to the existing building at this time, as well as the building need to be shifted over another about 7.5 feet or so to meet those side setbacks and extending that drive aisle to meet the fire department's recommendations of the 26 feet. So with that, staff does not feel comfortable recommending approval at this time.
Or Mitchell.
I've got more of a curiosity question. So the text here says the purpose of the buildings for extra storage for existing tenants.
Correct.
But yet I see all these parking spots marked off, so I don't understand how the extra storage for the tenants would require the parking, or is the parking just?
The parking's for the entire site.
It's for the entire site, but it's in the back.
There's parking back there that is utilized by some of those tenants, and
Okay.
that's what it's back there for.
Okay.
Yes. Can you give us your name and address, please?
My name is Akbar Arab. I'm the owner of this property. I just wanted to confirm that I don't have any problem moving the building back 15 feet as staff is recommending, and whatever maneuvering back and forth as we need. to provide for the fire service. And also, in the back of the building, right now the building is fully, almost 89% occupied on the upper floor and the lower floor. And all the parking spots in the back, they're all empty. There's no need for all these parking spots. And we just wanted to make a dead space into a usable space for our furniture company that he wanted to use it for furniture store.
Is that going to be, I'm sorry, is that your primary user of this? It would be the furniture company?
It's us and the furniture company. We both need spaces. Right now, he's using an off-site storage, which is very inconvenient for him, and he may have to move to another space that they give him more space for storage. But he loves this place, and he's doing very good business. He just asked us for a storage space, so he doesn't have to move anywhere else. And also, our construction company, we have a bunch of equipment sitting outside of the building. We were going to share the building to use everything, put everything on the inside of the storage space. So, and as far as sprinkler requirement, this is less than 9,000 square foot, so I don't know if the town of Smyrna require for us to put the sprinkler in this building. We'd be glad to do it. But there's, as you see, there's no bathroom. There's nothing else other than storage in there that it requires utility drawing. So we just wanted this for merely storage.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to work with the staff as far as moving the building back and forth and making shorter if they want me to, and so we can go ahead and build it. We've already purchased the building, and we are ready to go ahead and erect it, because we didn't want to lose this guy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you could come up and talk to us about sprinkler requirements for the building.
Yes, sir. Scott Byers, Smyrna Fire Department, 145 South Lowry. Under the occupancy code of storage under S1, if you have any type of furniture, mattresses, or anything else, anything over 2,500 square feet is required to have a automatic sprinkler system.
Yeah, I was hearing a lot of potential materials that sounded like they could be very combustible.
Yes, sir. That's actually one of the most stringent requirements for an automatic sprinkler is mattresses and furniture.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mitchell, you you being staff have recommended denial of this. What needs to be done, in your opinion, and how long are we looking at to accomplish what we're asking for?
Based on what staff needs to see with the setback being, the building being pushed back another 7.5 foot, it's gonna shift basically everything over a little bit, as well as increasing that drive aisle another 4 foot, I believe. So it's gonna shift the building closer to the existing building. It's gonna make for a crammed area back there, essentially. So we just feel like it's gonna alter this back of that site a little bit more significantly than just shifting the building a little bit.
The parking spaces that you mentioned, the 385, is that a combination of front and back? Is that what we're saying? And that achieves what's required for the whole complex?
Yes.
Okay.
The back of this building, is it gonna stay where it's at? Is it off the existing building far enough? Because the next building, I'm not sure that he's the property owner. That's a government services building, correct?
Yes.
Is it far enough off it? And if you push it too much further, there is a electrical meter or electrical connection, Middle Tennessee Electric, right in the middle of that parking lot. There's actually two of them.
These are part of the concerns we have.
Yes.
With you when you shift the building.
Access to those, plus access to the rear of these other buildings if you push it towards the other building to get your easement. You're gonna bind yourself up on getting behind that building.
So what I'm hearing is there are a lot of challenges that, and issues that need to be addressed here.
Yeah, we don't feel comfortable recommending approval, being there's so much shifting of the back of the property that needs to happen.
Okay. Any other questions for Mitchell staff?
Fire sprinkler, if you've got a construction company, you're not sure what they're storing in there either. All kinds of combustibles mixed with furniture and mattresses and things like that. So there's
Yes, sir.
there's a lot of stuff already outside over there,
Yes, sir.
you know, fenced in area. And a lot of that is combustible or could be, as far as paint and solvents, things like that that are out there, so.
Let me make one more comment.
Sure, I'll allow it.
Thank you, sir. I have no problem shifting the building. This is a metal building. We can shrink it as much as we want. We can alter the size of the building. We can shift it as much as wherever we want it. Nothing is cast in stone. It doesn't have to be 9,000 square foot. It can be a little less. So we can shorten one of the bays in order to go along with whatever staff is recommending. And as far as sprinkler system, the building is fully sprinkled, our existing building. We can provide sprinkler system for this building as well, so we don't have any problem doing it. We have no problem providing sprinkler system for the new building.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, discussion?
So a question for staff, with the statement just made and the proposal to change the dimensions of the building, do you have that size, those requirements, or how they would impact that building to change its current footprint? Is that something that can be provided?
At this time, we wouldn't know. No, that's what he's talking about. I think, if we're changing the size of the building, location of the building and all that, at this time, we don't know what all that means and how that affects what our recommendation might be.
And as we were talking about the adjustment of the footprint, just to fit the setbacks that we were talking about, it sounded to me as if the building was going to have to shrink to be able to
Right.
fit into the envelope. And I appreciate you being, willing to do that, but from my perspective, we're going to need to see what those drawings are. We're going to need to see what that size adjustment is and make sure that it fits in that envelope. So like we did on the last one, I'll be happy to make a motion to defer it for 30 days if you think that's going to give you time. Because I couldn't support approving what we have before us, so.
That 30-day deferral would just give you another 30 days to bring it back, and after you've met with staff and gotten the fire issues, the sprinkler issues, all that resolved.
Sure.
That way you're not getting a motion from us to approve or deny tonight. If you prefer deferral, I think that's what Mr. Dover is.
Sounds good.
Is that something you would be welcome to?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Then with that, I'll make that motion to defer for 30 days.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to defer. Any further discussion? All those in favor of deferring signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is deferred. You got that right this time, didn't you? Okay, next item, agenda or ordinance amendments. We start off with critical lot subdivision regulations.
Yeah, these are all things that staff has brought before you, things that we have discussed internally and felt like we wanted to make some changes. The first one is an amendment to the subdivision regulations, specifically adding provisions regarding critical lots. These are lots that have excessively steep slopes, sinkholes, floodplain, and other natural features which make construction more problematic. This would require these lots to be designated on the preliminary and final plats with no building permits being issued until a lot-specific site plan is prepared by a civil engineer and submitted to the town engineer for review. And after such a plan has been reviewed and approved, the building permit could be issued, but no CO could be issued until that designer and engineer of record certifies that the construction is in compliance with the site plan. This is something that's new for Smyrna. It's not new with regards to a lot of other communities around us, including Rutherford County, Lebanon, Mount Juliet, Franklin, and others do require this. This is something we're seeing as we are beginning to develop into areas that are much more, topography is much more steep, things like that. We're seeing issues with driveways being very difficult for cars to traverse. We saw there's one where, and I will provide you some pictures. I didn't have time to get all that together this time, but we'll certainly, before you actually vote on it, because this is something that's really for discussion tonight. You do have to hold it. The subdivision regulations are something that the planning commission only reviews. The council doesn't review them. And it's something you do have to hold a public hearing on. So if you all want to, we could certainly schedule that for the next month's meeting, and then you could vote at that time. But again, we're seeing situations where, a house is next door, and it's very steep, and we're concerned about, soil eroding into people's back doors, and there's just some things that, because again, the topography of the property that's being developed now is, in many cases, is a lot more difficult than it used to be. And so, this is something that actually code staff has talked about, and myself, and the engineering staff, and public works, and we've been talking about it for a little bit of time, and I finally wanted to go ahead and present it to you all for discussion, and it is something we feel pretty strongly about, and do feel like we need to add to our regulations. And so we would certainly recommend it to you. Again, not for a vote tonight, just for discussion tonight, and then come back next month with after a public hearing, and actually would vote on it at that time. So that's all that I've got.
Questions for Kevin or discussion about this item?
Kevin, in essence, this just kind of takes those scrub lots and those challenging lots and puts a layer of protection on them. Would this do anything in the way of, say, engineered footers or slabs or anything like that? Or would it have to be approved in a manner by an engineer at this point?
Yeah, it certainly could be part of that. Could be, depending on the situation, you could have retaining wall design and those other kind of things. But yeah, it would require all that, and that plan would have to come to staff, reviewed by the engineering department, and then once they have approved it, then at that point they could get the building permit and build it. And again, but before that CO could be issued, that design engineer would have to come out and say, almost like an as-built, and certify that it has been, it was constructed as it was designed.
And that's been some things that probably weren't designated to have to be done, but I know you've dealt with many of those in the past.
So, yeah, certainly, yeah, codes at times.
Sinkhole properties and things
Yeah,
like that.
do require engineered footings and all,
Right.
on things, sometimes, yes.
So
But
this just
would
puts
kinda-
that layer of a must in there.
Right, and it would designate it on the plat, some sort of star and asterisk kind of thing,
Okay.
and so that, codes would know to stop. When someone comes to get a building permit, you can't do that permit until you meet this extra layer of review. So,
Where would you see that as far as our discussion? Would we be looking at this if someone brought a subdivision in and we had some critical lots identified? Is that something that we would see on a preliminary plat, or?
yes. Preliminary and the final.
In the site?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and this is obviously going to be primarily a residential situation. Most of the commercial development's not going to have a lot of these issues that we're talking about for the most part. So it's primarily going to be in those, again, those more of the residential areas.
And Kevin, as we move forward with this, you've got examples of how it's done the right way, as well as what can happen when it's not done properly, and those examples will be provided for us to discuss on, as well as
Certainly.
available for
Yeah,
public hearing
certainly,
as well.
I would have to say right way versus wrong way. I don't want to pass judgment necessarily on something that was approved. But certainly some examples that show concerns.
Yes.
That why we would like to move forward, the things that we have seen in the field that we're concerned about, that we would like to get again, just another layer of review. Not necessarily that those are going to be a problem necessarily, but could be a problem in the future because it's something, some additional things that we haven't looked at and reviewed just because we don't require it and we haven't. The driveway slope, there's some houses with some really steep driveway slopes. And for the most part, they're short enough that they're not an issue from a fire perspective, but we've got a couple in town that are really steep and they're long driveways and there is concerns from the fire department being able to get back to the house for purpose to protect it if they needed to, so.
Do we have a percentage grade in our codes ordinances about how steep a driveway can be?
We don't.
I know
And we
FHA
actually don't have anything specifically in this as it's drafted now, but I think I will probably add something about that but when it's come to you, when it's advertised and when it comes to you, as far as a maximum slope on a driveway.
If I'm not mistaken, FHA used to require nothing over 14%. Now, that may have changed, but at that time, you couldn't get a government loan if the driveway was steeper than that.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial to have those recommendations included.
Sure.
In that. I'm getting kind of a consensus up here just from the questions that we would like to move forward with that, so. Yeah, so next step then?
Next step is we'll probably make a few revisions to this, and then we'll advertise for public hearing at the July meeting, and then provide you some additional information, some pictures and things like that that could hopefully explain what we're talking about in visual form, so it'd be a little easier for you to maybe understand what we're saying. And then you would, again, could vote on it then at the July meeting.
Okay. All right. It's good, everybody? Okay. Well, this is timely. Next item, exterior building materials design review manual.
Yeah, this is something after the discussion last month regarding specifically the church. I thought we wanted to bring this forward to you. This is something I felt like we need to have this discussion. We've had this discussion in the past with some of the folks that were here before when we talked about this before. Looking at, maybe better defining primary and secondary materials. Currently, we just allow for primarily just have a list of exterior materials, and then we do say that the ground face or kind of split face block and engineered fiber cement type products may be used as an accent only. And so I kind of split that up that basically we'd have a list of materials that are acceptable as primary materials, which are brick, stone, tile, plaster, glass, and glazing. And then a list of materials that are allowed as secondary, which would be stucco, EIFS, the ground face masonry, and the hardy board. In the past, when we talked about this in the past, we did discuss putting an actual percentage on there. We talked about 75%, we talked about 50%, we talked about different things. And at the time, the Planning Commission didn't make any specific recommendations. And so, certainly, and as this is drafted, there's not a specific percentage. But after the discussion tonight again, I think we probably need to look at that. I did look in our Eden Springs overlay, we do have percentages. And it's any facade or any street facing facade has to be 75% in that primary the primary material list. And then the overall building has to be at least 50%. That's what we have in the overlay, and so I would probably, for consistency's sake, would probably make that recommendation if you want to put percentages in there, that be added to this as well.
I certainly agree with adding the percentages, and even tonight while we were talking about the church, in my mind, I was thinking 75-25, I think was a good clear line to say what the difference between primary and secondary accent would be.
Yeah, I really don't think it's fair to say that we don't agree with something, but yet can't give a quantitative number, We've got to be able to tell people what is the standard?
And I
People
do
want
like
to-
the idea of it being
Yeah.
facing sides as well as total body, because that's the same thing we saw
Yeah.
tonight, right?
Yep. Agreed.
Well, I just think it gives clarity to us as a commission and also to the folks that are bringing items in, because it's hard to, and I think Tony pointed out on a couple of occasions when we looked at the elevations last month, it was black and white. We really didn't know what the materials were or the percentages, and I know in the past we've gone to, different building owners and said, hey, you're on an arterial, or, you're in an area that we're really working on, and we've got some buildings that are nicer and we'd like to be consistent with it. And that's a tough conversation sometimes to have on both sides, because you want to be, you want to be consistent with what's there, but then again, you have an ordinance that really doesn't define it, so you're kind of in a catch-22 at that point, so.
You like the flexibility when something comes in to kind of make a judgment call, but at the same time, you have to have a guideline to go by.
And to that, I noticed that, Planning Commission may vary from the materials listed above on a case-by-case basis, as long as the decision does not contradict the goals set forth in this manual. So I think that gives us a little bit of discretion there, but certainly I think it sets the base from where we work from.
Kevin, give me an example of tile or plaster as a,
I don't know that we've had any of that come through. That's been in the manual since it was adopted. I don't know that anybody has really
cleaning it
used
up, do we need that in there as a?
That's,
Is plaster something?
I think it's fine to be in there. I don't have any issues with them being in there. I don't know that anybody has used them that I can recall anyway, off the top of my head. So it's really, we can
It
certainly.
almost seems like that too, in a sense, would be an accent anymore if it were ever used.
Well, we can take it off.
I'm just throwing it out there, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would be fine if you want to remove it. Like I said, if it's in there now, we just have a list of what's allowed, so I put them in there as exterior, but that's fine, or primary material.
Well, you used to
Moving them
see-
over to secondary would be fine.
You used to see plaster in older buildings, and I can just tell you from an insurance perspective, when you're looking at homes that someone's purchasing in an older part of town, and you look at some of the interior walls and you find out they're plaster, and you go back to the insurance carrier and you're talking about it, and they're like, great, we'll replace it, but, not to put everybody to sleep tonight, but they'll talk about functional replacement costs, where they're basically saying that material's not really readily available, or we don't want to work with it, so we'll substitute drywall for it. So it may be antiquated at this point, I don't know.
I say we pull it out of there, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're not used, and I think we're just leaving it open for somebody to put something really odd looking in the middle of somewhere else at this
Okay,
point.
But if
we can
it's
just take tile and
designed to
plaster out completely.
Right.
We can just take them out completely, and we'll just keep it the brick, stone, and glass and glazing as your primary materials, and then secondary being stucco, EIFS, ground face masonry, and engineered fiber cement products. And this is really just this is primarily for the commercial, because multifamily, we do allow for the fiber cement, more of that being as a primary. And then, of course, in industrial, we allow for the tilt panel concrete and things like that. So this is really primarily those commercial zones.
So Kevin, you mentioned a few minutes ago about having primary as an example, 75%, and specifically call out the facade, and then also call out total.
Right, 50% for the overall building facade,
And
yes.
so, I don't know that I'm recommending this, I'm just asking if staff would be cognizant of this as we're writing this in. Do we need language that defines on a side-by-side? Because again, we just had this example tonight where one side was very heavy EIFS, where the others were not. And does that make a difference? I don't know, but I would just like you to just consider that as you're thinking through it.
Yeah, I think if this is approved, as we're talking about, we're gonna have to have that on every project coming forward is gonna have to have that level of detail that we had tonight.
Yeah.
On that particular
On each
building.
side.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's something we're gonna have to put in our, if it's not submitted originally, we're gonna have to put that in our staff comments to them and to provide that level of detail.
So then it wouldn't be a 50% on the overall, it'd be a 50% minimum per side.
I mean, that's certainly something if we can do that. I think how we've been discussing was 50% overall, is my understanding. So it'd be 75% on any street-facing facade, but, you know, the back of the building may be 20% primary material or something like that, as long as still the overall is 50. That's how we have it in the overlay.
Okay.
Union Springs overlay. So.
That leaves for a lot of interpretations.
Well, and again, that's not how it's drafted now. I think it's pretty easy to be drafted that, you know, that we list the primary and secondary materials. The building is, any street-facing facade is required to be 75% primary materials. And
Okay, facing.
50% of the overall facade of the building has to be the primary materials. And yeah, that gives you the flexibility for the designer as far as maybe on different things, as far as the different facades, as long as those overall minimums are met.
I like the percentages you're proposing, and again, I think it, you know, works well with what we have out there and is consistent to go forward with that.
Right. Since that's what we had in the overlay, to me, that makes sense to me. This is something, a design review manual amendment is treated like a zoning ordinance amendment, so this would be a recommendation to council in 2 readings of council with the public hearing at the council level, so.
So you brought it to us tonight for us to recommend, not recommend?
Certainly, I feel comfortable with you recommending, I would recommend this to you, to recommend it to council. But
Okay.
if you want us to, obviously, that's up to you, if y'all, what y'all want to do, but that would be my recommendation.
All right. Then I'll.
As we've talked about with some
Let's
changes.
let's
we talked about.
summarize what
Yeah.
what
Basically,
been
as it's
recommended.
drafted, but we're going to remove the tile and plaster, and then we're going to add wording that any street-facing facade is required to be at least 75% of utilizing the primary exterior materials, and the entire building, all facades together, will have to be at least 50% of the primary materials.
Okay. So if we wanted to take action, I suppose somebody would make a motion to do so.
To recommend approval to the
Recommend
council.
approval.
And that's the same stipulations as the overlay.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay. I have a motion to approve per what's been presented and amended tonight. Do I have a second?
Is it street facing or street visible?
Street facing. That's what's in the overlay, is the street facing.
Can we change it to visible?
Yes.
That's certainly, yeah,
If
visible is
you-
fine, I
motion.
mean, yeah. We can say, yeah, any elevation visible from a public street.
That could be more than one side.
Certainly could be
Yes.
more than one side, absolutely.
Yes.
I like that better.
Okay. So,
75%.
so we have a,
did with the church.
okay, so Mark is amending his motion to be street visible as far as the elevations are concerned.
Right.
All right, I don't think I have a second yet.
You do not.
Okay.
I did.
Did you give one?
Street visible, I'll second.
Okay, I got a second. Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have approved this design review. amendment recommendation.
So,
Okay.
one more thing on that, Tim, before we move off of
Sure.
it. Even before, when I was on the planning commission, there have been numerous debates about whether that side is going to be visible from the road or not. And a lot, it's perspective, but, I mean, Mike, you're adamant on the other side that you're going to see it. I agree with you, you're going to
Yep.
see it. I remember a specific building where, when I was on the planning commission the last time, we had this discussion with the developer, you're not going to see it, you're not going to see it. It's built, and you see it, clear as day. Is there, and I don't know, I don't have a recommendation, is there any way to make that more standardized, to get a more clear, I mean, it's perception I get, but is there anything we can go by that will help guide that? Because it is subject to interpretation, but once it's built, it's built.
And once it's built, you're right. I mean, we can, there are software packages and things like that to have these renderings that people do, and we've seen some of those even tonight. It's a lot of times those are done kind of in, you know, there's always a million trees, and so it's not necessarily a completely realistic view of what's actually on the ground.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is even after construction.
Developer.
Sure.
That's why I
So-
went out there and drove it. It's gonna be seen.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we could start looking at asking for those type of renderings, because it's gonna be very difficult to 100% know that on anything,
Because post-construction elevations look dramatically different when you clear a lot and cut down trees.
clear a lot,
and-
you cut down the
yeah.
trees, maybe with the grading, it's different, maybe it's, you know, the lot may be lowered and be more visible than what it is before development. So, I mean, it's certainly,
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, would staff be able to bring the recommendation to us that, you know, north, south, east elevations are visible?
sure, yeah, we can certainly add
And you're
those.
recommending that, you know, the percentages be applied to certain elevations based upon that, and we kind of go
It
from
has
there?
some standard to just apply that to, so that we
Right.
know when it's brought that, based on what we use to determine that, it meets it or it doesn't.
Right.
Sure.
Take the seasons in effect too, because if trees don't have leaves, it's visible.
Sure, that's,
The
sure.
grass is not 4 foot high and they cut it once a month.
That software should be able to do seasons, right? Summer?
You know, but a lot of these commercial properties cut some of their properties once a month. And if the grass is fairly high and they're bush hogging it, you may not be able to see it. When it gets cut, you will see it. So,
Okay.
I'm out and about every day, so I see a whole lot of it, and I'm like, Tony, can be very visible, so.
All right. Tony, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Vince is up next.
This is, again, something we has talked about internally a lot as staff, and especially, well, primarily codes and planning staff. There's been a lot of issues regarding fences over the years and different things, and I don't want to rehash all that. But we had put some ordinance back in 2002, and they still exist today. And there's still a lot of confusion primarily amongst the residents of the community, and so we want to bring some things that maybe kind of clarify some things first, and then also change as far as what's allowed a little bit as well. And so basically what we're looking at is to kind of maybe change the definition of a fence and a decorative fence, and basically to clarify on a decorative fence primarily that it would be something it has to be wood, wrought iron, vinyl, or brick, and it has to be no more than 3 feet tall. And basically a decorative fence is allowed in the front yard, along the side property lines, but not fully enclosing that front yard. It will be only along the side property line. And then also adding the provision that if a piece of property is zoned for agricultural use, then these don't apply. Which is how we always enforced it, but it's not spelled out in the ordinance. And we did have some pictures in this one, some things that have been built that we feel like probably should be allowed that are not technically not allowed. There is one picture in there that they did show going across the front yard, but they didn't completely enclose, so I think they thought they were okay. So, and then there's also another picture of a split rail fence along the side property line that's, again, it's technically, would be in violation. So, and primarily, again, just along those side property line, not enclosing the front yard, so you're not enclosing meters, you're not making it more difficult for the fire department to get to the building. We don't looking at enclosing the yard, but just allow for folks to put some fencing in their front yards, to provide some boundaries between them and their neighbors and those kind of things. So, again, only those specific materials and only those, nothing more than 3 feet tall. So. And this is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, so this would be a recommendation as well to the to the council, rather.
Is a person required to come in and get a permit to?
They do not require a fence permit unless it's over 7 feet tall, I believe. The building code requires it.
The reason I'm asking, I'm trying to figure out, would the average homeowner know where the front setback line was so that they stayed out of it, or would it be something that would be after the fact? Codes was looking at it.
We ask that they fill out an application, and that way we can run it and make sure they're not putting a fence in an easement or on top of a utility.
Hey, some people might want to hear you, Charles. I'm sorry, go ahead, repeat that.
Charles King, Town Engineer. We do have it where they can come in for a fence application, which is free of charge, and our staff will look at it and make sure they're not putting the fence in a drainage easement, a utility easement, or if there is a utility there, that we notify them that they must be 5 feet off that utility or 10 feet, depending on whether it's water or gas, and the setback. So we will review that for them for free to let them know ahead of time what they are expected when codes comes out.
I'm just trying to figure out what would trigger.
How would they know to come see you?
How would they know to come to see you?
It's on our website that, to come and get put in a fence application.
And we've done some, our public information officer has put some information out recently through the website and the social media and things like that to try and get some of that word out. We're seeing a lot more, it always happens this time of year, there's a lot more folks, making those type of home improvements and things. And we have seen some, the Coast Department has seen some that, and following up and talking to the homeowners, they looked at our ordinance and thought they were okay. They really, so, because of the confusion within the ordinance, that they thought they were okay, because they felt like it was a decorative fence. And so, I mean, that's why part of the reason why we're wanting to make some of those changes, to make it, because folks do read our ordinance and try to abide by the rules, and want to make it a little easier for them to understand what those rules are.
Yeah, and I think if it's the commission's wish to make this recommendation tonight, that maybe we start with that, public, what do we call it?
Public service.
Service announcement, thank you. That maybe we reinforce that. Because, and I think maybe a lot of it, in some of our newer subdivisions, we've been pretty consistent as far as third-party HOAs, and they have rules and regulations that typically govern that, and most of the time I would imagine a good bit of it may not even be allowed, but, certainly as far as, I guess I probably wouldn't have known that I had to, but prior to this.
I think that fence in your backyard is going to have to come down.
No, it's not. But I mean, prior to me doing this, I may not have known, or even really thought. I probably wouldn't, quite honestly, I probably would have been trying to figure out a way to talk my wife out of digging a hole in a yard anyway to put a fence up, but I just want to make sure that we communicate this, going forward, or continue to.
Yeah, and I think it's something and when we were talking about it, I think it's something, again, we ran it, but I'm sure we can run it again, periodically as need to be.
Okay.
That's what we asked the Blair Road people to do. Does that,
They haven't governed their HOAs yet, so.
well, I mean, that's a front yard that we just said. have
Yeah,
that.
well, up to the public sidewalks, it'd be out of the right of way. And that, personally, that's the reason I kind of requested that, is Blair Road's a busy road.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Trying to protect
Yeah.
some kids right there, but yeah.
I don't disagree with what we did. I just want to make
Right.
sure we didn't tell them to do something we were just saying
Oh, yeah,
you
no.
can't do.
Right.
What's the wishes of the commission?
So is this something you need a recommendation from us to move forward with, or this is something that also needs to go
It
through a
would be
public
a,
hearing?
it's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, so it would be a recommendation to the council.
So I make
For
a motion
approval.
to accept this ordinance and recommend it to the council.
Okay. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor of this amendment to the zoning ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Recommendation is approved. Okay, June bond review report.
Yeah, run through this real quick. We only got a relatively shorter report this month. First one is the Ryan Smith properties. This is the commercial development on Old Nashville Highway. It's just a small sewer line they need to extend. Did not hear back from them prior to this packet's being coming out. I have talked with them in the past about this, and I would recommend another 6-month extension and to try and get that finished up within this next 6 months. Again, it's just a small area that they need to fix or extend a line. Creekstone Village, this one is a residential development. It's about 93% built out. I did talk to that developer. He did ask, he's ready to finish out, and he did ask for the punch list, so I did go ahead and send that to him early. If they do get the work completed before June 26th, I would be okay reducing that to $10,000 and extending it 1 year as the maintenance bond. Otherwise, extend it 6 months at the same amount. Alta Vista, this one is, I think at least the permits have been issued on all those lots. I don't know if they've all started on all of them yet, but again, did talk to the developer. They did want to get 1 more year on that one. This is one we've only had for a year, so I'm okay with that. And maybe we can convert that one at some point in that year to maintenance, but we'll see. And then Cantrell Farms, Section 1, this one's close to 100% built out as well. They did say that they are looking at placing that last layer of asphalt here by June 15th. And so that if that happens, or as long as it's before the expiration of the letter of credit on July 11th, also reduce that to $10,000 and extend 1 year as the maintenance bond, but otherwise extend it 6 months at the same amount. That's all that I have.
Thanks for Kevin. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the bond review.
I have a motion to approve the bond review. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of approving the bond review, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The bond review report is approved. It says staff comments and other business. I'm thinking we might be ready for the July meeting now.
Getting
It's
close.
a long night.
Yeah. The only thing I did send out the draft comprehensive plan, and so I did want to at least bring that up to everyone's attention. We're certainly ready to move forward with that when you all are ready for it. I'll also send it to the council. We can have, a separate meeting on that if you want to. We have had several meetings over the past couple of years as we worked through that. I did want to bring it up for any other questions or comments you all may have. about that at this time, but that's the only thing I would have under other.
Okay.
So.
All right, anything from any of the staff? Charles, you good?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Anything from the commission? We stand adjourned.